Hello, everyone, and welcome to the TNV Podcast, episode number 2. Today's thought: self preservation. It's kind of late right now. I'm recording this podcast on a Saturday night. I am kind of tired, but I figured let me just do this anyway because this week has been a huge week for me on YouTube. I have now 4 subscribers, so um, all jokes aside, thank you for listening in and joining the club. I think it's just cool, count your blessings, they say. I want to talk about self preservation today, something that is in line with last week's podcast that was about basically daring and trying something and not refraining from trying just because other people are going to have an opinion about you and losing yourself in that sort of experience of being judged and taking it to the heart too much. And I was reading this tweet from Mitski some time ago, I think about a year ago, and I'll read it to you right now. And that's what is in line with this episode. It goes like this: I used to rebel by destroying myself, but realized that's awfully convenient to the world. For some of us, our best revolt is self-preservation. That is straight up one of the most beautiful things I have ever read. It, I don't know, I read that and I thought, it sort of changed my view of myself and of life, and it made me realize how awfully convenient it can be to become part of the masses and to basically strip away your own personality for the convenience of others. And you see it happening around you all the time. I said last time, there's so many creative souls or people that I meet that have all this potential that never get to reach it because they basically become like the other in order to fit into the narrative. And I think what Miski is beautifully describing here, I'm assuming it's her own writing, I'm not sure, but I'm assuming it is how rebellion can be found in self-preservation, in staying true to yourself. I do also want to say that I understand how difficult it is to do that, right? To preserve yourself in the face of judgment, in the face of resistance. And I also believe that being able to preserve yourself has to be some kind of privilege for most of us, right? So being able to remain true to very basic things such as your hobbies or your passions or just in general who you are, but also to things that cause more resistance in society. That can be your sexual orientation, or it can be your religion. It can be things that cause a lot of friction. And for some people, don't have that privilege, right? They have to be preserving themselves, maybe only for themselves. And there's always this dichotomy, is that the right word, that they experience by only seeing themselves as they really are, and then having the world experience a whole different version of them that is safe. So I understand about self-preservation that it's not something that anyone gets to have, that there's a certain privilege in that. Simultaneously, there's many people who preserve themselves, who preserve their culture, and who are actively being met with violence, who are not, in a position of any privilege. These are people that are living in war-torn countries. These are people that are being, are being targeted because of their background, because of their ethnicity, and they stand tall and they stand for who they are and they stand for what they believe in or what they have taught, their children and the legacy that is in their DNA. And there's no privilege in that. It's just a form of rebellion. And For the world, indeed, it would be awfully convenient if we would just wave the white flag and say we give up. But I think we kind of can't, right? It's so important that there's diversity in opinion, diversity in thought, diversities in beliefs, diversity in ways of living. And I think also being young and being in my early 20s and finding ways to make sense of, this human experience, and also finding myself being in positions more and more where I kind of feel like I'm making decisions that will affect my life long term, because you're growing up, you're adulting now. It's there's always this fear that I'm having to lose myself in that sort of process that is becoming like the rest, or becoming part of the mold. And it's not always a valid fear, right? I can experience fears around self-preservation that are it's just that are just being anxious to having to commit to something for a longer period than just a few months or a year, which causes anxiety for me. And I'm like, yeah, I don't want that. I feel a lot of resistance about that, but maybe long term it's actually good for me. And then there's the self-preservation that is actually losing your identity to the crowd, which is something that I think we need to fight at all given times, because there's so much sadness in that, and there's so much loss in that, and you can tell when people have been through that process. And these are often not happy people. You can tell that they're disturbed individuals who either had to let this go, or who chose to let it go and now mourn those parts of themselves. It's all kind of abstract what I'm talking about here. It's not something that is maybe easy to grasp or make sense to you. So if you're listening to this and you're like, yeah, what is this guy rambling about? That's kind of the point of these podcasts, right? I'm putting myself out here, sharing my thoughts about topics. It's unscripted, because these are late night thoughts, and I want to challenge the thoughts and think about the topics, which is self-preservation, that is on my mind. And I think, going back to the tweet that Mitski wrote, where she says that for some of us, our best revolt is self-preservation, that hits home for me. I think I always believed I had to sort of change parts about myself to fit in better, to be more well liked, especially when I was younger, right? But then you grow up, and these are actually exactly the parts of you that people now celebrate, and that they are now maybe even paying you for, where that makes sense for your job. I'm not sure, but these are things that people then see, pick apart, and say, "Oh, this is amazing. This is why we remember you." But when you're younger, it's different, and so many of us go through that. And I think indeed for them, self-preservation is so important. It's culture, it's personality, it's rituals, and it are stories, right? It's the stories we know about each other, the stories we tell about ourselves. And to me, self-preservation does not mean remaining stagnant. It does not mean staying in some kind of mental state or physical state forever just because it feels comfortable. It means remaining true to myself. And it means not budging that for the convenience of other people. Which also means that whenever you're being challenged in a room full of people that have different beliefs than you, and you feel that it's not in line with who you are or where you want to go, that you stand up for yourself, and that you don't budge, and that you don't say, but no, I agree with you. No, you don't agree with them, and you explain why that is, and then stay true to yourself. But I do know how difficult that can be. And once again, when I come back to the privilege part, not everyone is in a position to do that. And there's so much pain in that, right? For the people that can't do that, because either they don't know how to do it vocally or verbally, or there's too much at stake for standing out, or there's, maybe the consequences that you lose shelter. Could be many reasons as to why people have to temporarily remain from self-preservation. But if you are in a position where you don't have to because your family or friends celebrate that for you, or your environment is actually cheering you on, that's very special. And I think you need to look at those who can't and at times cheer them on, where it's, in silence or with a nod of appreciation, or actually indeed telling them how you feel about it, because it can change a lot for someone. Um, it's about seeing someone. It's about actually really genuinely seeing them. And I think even if you lost parts of yourself, and even if you did not rebel in that kind of form, it's never too late to go back or to find yourself again. There's always a new way to preserve yourself and to refine that identity. But indeed, it is a beautiful form of rebellion in a world that far too often asks of us to be convenient, when in a lot of that convenience, so much beauty, art, and resistance that is necessary goes to waste. So that's my thoughts on self-preservation for this week. That was the podcast for for this week. Excuse me if it was sort of a ramble kind of situation, but I think that's what I like about these podcasts, that I can just be my thoughts and just sharing them unstructured and putting it out there. So I'd like to know what you think about the topic and the thought. And yeah, see you next time. Oh, and remember, these are all just thoughts, no verdict.